As you grow older, you will generally experience the passage of time to move faster. And I think if we're not careful about that, you will often end up at the end of your life thinking, where did all the time go? While I do have some hope that life extension will eventually get to a place where we can actually live 3 times longer, I think outside of just doing the normal healthy things to live a long, healthy life, there is a lot to be gained in terms of living longer by focusing on how you experience it. If you're new here, my name is Jarle, and on Early Owl, we learn to live longer lives. I think the first thing to highlight is that there's 2 different ways how we experience time. One is remembering it, and the other is experiencing it. What is most important of the remembered self and the experienced self is a bigger philosophical discussion that I won't get into. But I think in particular, when it comes to the passage of time, it's pretty easy to make the case that you want to optimize for the remembered self. If you feel like time is going slowly in the moment, then that is often correlated with things we don't want to do. Like if you're sitting at the DMV waiting in queue for 2 hours, that's probably going to be 2 hours which are pretty slow. Or if you are in like extreme pain, again, even if it's just 5 minutes, that might feel like a very long time. But I don't think these things generally translated to experiencing having lived a longer life. Like if your entire life was just waiting in line, I don't think you would sit back at the end of it and think, I lived a really long life, but it might have felt like it in the moment. We can't stop ourselves from getting older, but I don't think getting older is the most important factor in terms of how fast time feels for you. So what are some ways we can live longer in terms of how we remember it? There's a lot of different overlapping factors which goes into how you experience time looking back at things, but I think most of them come through learning or through new experiences or some mix between the two. I would say new experiences is probably the easiest way to feel like time is going slower. There is a couple of things that kind of help this happen. The most important and obvious one is novelty. Like if you do something new, like if you travel to a new country or you get a new job, then that is going to be more memorable the more different it is. I think the best example of how new experiences makes time go slower would be moving to a new country. In that scenario, everything is new, like you might be fitting into a new culture, you have a new apartment, a new environment. Even just going to the grocery store will mean you need to go to a new store, figure out new meals, and just figure out everything over again. If you just had the same job, lived in the same place, and had the same friends for like years and years, and then you root everything up and just move to a different country, I think you'll find that the first month in this new country feels about as long as the last year in your previous place. Another factor I found, especially in these last few years, that have had a significant impact on how I experience time is learning new things. And I think this one was a bit of a surprise to me actually, because I have been learning things in the past and I didn't get the same experience of time slowing down. So I don't think it's just something that automatically happens if you just learn new things. And there's a lot of different variables that impact how pronounced this effect is. The first one is novelty, like how new this is to you. If you're a programmer learning a new programming language, then the effect probably isn't going to be that big. And similarly, moving to another country is a huge way to kind of shake things up. But if you're moving from Norway to Sweden, that's going to be quite different than if you're moving from Norway to India. I think challenge and maybe making sure you're pushing your brain and pushing your abilities is quite an important factor of this, especially when it comes to learning. Like if you are doing something you're already very comfortable with and most of your mind is just running on autopilot and you are just trying to tweak specific variables, or just trying to do something slightly different or improve slightly, I don't think that's going to have a major impact on how you experience time. Another very important factor, I think, is things that can have some chance of changing your identity. Like if you're already a person who's done a bunch of arts and crafts and now you're learning to knit, then that probably isn't going to slow down time significantly for you. But if you're a person who has always been shy and always has been scared of public speaking, and then you go through something like a public speaking course or maybe a YouTube course, and you feel like you really have to put yourself out there in a different way, then when you look back on that time, it's probably going to feel like a lot happened in that short period of time. Two experiences I've had in the more recent years when it comes to learning is, first of all, when I was starting to learn how to draw, this is the first time I kind of really thought about this when it comes to learning, because I hadn't really experienced it to the same degree before. But when I was just starting out to draw, I kind of signed up for some drawing courses, and it was like a very intense period in terms of learning. And each month, there was like a lot of new, very distinct challenges that I've never faced before. And I remember all of those periods quite vividly. Like looking back at my early drawing courses, I can still remember like when I was trying to learn to draw figures or when I was trying to learn to draw environments. And those periods in my life stand out like much more so than the last year, for example, where I haven't been pushing myself in the same way when it comes to learning. Similarly, when it comes to YouTube, at the beginning, I had like this pretty intense 6-week course where there was a lot of new skills and a lot of different things to take in. And I remember that period more vividly and like feel like that was a very long time than if I look back at my last like 8 months on YouTube or something, where I've more been focused on just like honing the craft and kind of improving what I'm already doing. I do think there's a couple of secondary factors at play as well. I haven't looked much into data backing this up or anything, but I do know sleep, diet, exercise has a very big impact on how memories are formed generally. So it wouldn't surprise me that if you're lacking in any of those areas, then that would have a significant impact on how you experience time, just because your memories aren't forming as well. Now, I don't think you always need to be focused on trying to slow down time. Like there's many reasons why you might want time to go faster. Like let's say you're on a diet. I'm sure anyone who's been on a diet can relate that if you're sticking to your diet and you realize that, okay, in 6 months, I'll be able to hit my goal, it would be nice to be kind of able to skip ahead those 6 months. So in that sense, if you're able to move time faster and you're moving in a positive direction, that might be a good thing. There's also a bunch of other things you might want to prioritize over kind of getting new experiences just to slow down time. To take myself as an example, I've lived in 5 different countries now, and I think I've kind of leaned into living in different countries for this exact reason, that I don't want to just live in the same place and just do the same thing and feel like time is just flying past. But for right now, I'm living in the Czech and I've been here for like 3-4 years, and I bought my apartment here. And while I won't stay here for the rest of my life, definitely, I'm happy to stay here for a couple of more years, even though I know it makes time go faster for me and I could just move. And the main reason for that is that I'm more focused on kind of building things that I'm proud of and that I'm happy with, than kind of filling it up with new experiences. Like I'm building this YouTube channel and I'm building the company I'm working for, SafetyWing. And these things can become a bit monotonous in some ways, in the sense that I'm not pushing myself in very new directions all the time. But I'm kind of fine with that, and I'm fine spending a couple of years here where time will move relatively fast, because I'm moving towards a direction I'm happy about. But I can also say with a pretty high degree of certainty that I'm not going to just stay in this mode forever until I'm retired and then just be happy with that. I'm definitely going to go back into periods where I will push myself more and kind of go more outside of my comfort zone and try different things, just to kind of feel like I'm getting more out of the experience of life. So it's completely fine if you're happy with where you're going and you're happy with your life right now to just stay with that and accept that time is going to move faster. But I do think if you've just always been living in the same place, always been doing the same thing and never really thought about changing things up, that this should be something that you really think hard about. Like, would I be happy waking up 30 years from now and just being like, where the hell did the time go? And if that's something that scares you, then it might be worth considering just seriously shaking things up, just for the sake of shaking things up and building some new experiences and making time go a bit slower. So this video is more about how you experience time, not as much about how you spend it. But I think we are also quite ignorant of how we spend most of our time. So I will link to my video on time tracking here. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm pretty sure I will see you next Wednesday. I am traveling some in the upcoming week, so that might impact the release schedule. We will see. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next Wednesday.